Hi, Jamie. Thank you for joining me today.
Thanks, Mike.
For the benefit of everyone else, could you just quickly introduce yourself and tell us what you do, generally what you do at MedBrief?
Yeah, so I'm Jamie. I'm a nurse by background. Was an intensive care nurse for many years, then worked in the medical legal sector for about 10 years in total. So at the moment, I'm heavily involved in MedBrief for the early case assessments, sort of early cases, but also in my spare time, so we're doing for since before COVID was working with cyclists predominantly, to help teach them kind of mental skills. I got into it through initially training through as a hypnotherapist, and as a cyclist, I kind of drifted into helping cyclists. That's kind of a more of a spare time thing.
Amazing. So the point of our call today was around mindset, and I'm quite uneducated in that regard, let's say. So give us a brief overview of how you approach cycling mindset.
Yeah, I think it's really sort of working with people and seeing what they want to build on. I think, we touched on it before the call. I think sometimes people can be very not realize, or just not realize that people can change their mindset. Sometimes we feel that we're stuck, and that's kind of the way we are. And actually, you know what, our brains learn new things all the time, especially the younger we are. Then actually there are kind of skills that you can use for things like confidence, technical skills as well, things that we do through motor functions. And our brain learns these new things all the time. And so by using skills like hypnosis or visualization or guided meditation, which are all kind of science really from an experience point of view as well, they're all very similar, and neurologically, and from what the person doing it experiences. But by doing things like you can make changes more quickly, by developing kind of new neural pathways and new habits and just different ways of doing things.
So it's super interesting because I think I'm a classic non-believer in hypnosis, for example. So for growing up, when I grew up, it was all about Paul McKenna,
yeah.
And stage hypnosis, I suppose. But that's not it, is it? It's actually it's not like the performance Paul McKenna would do. It's actually quite a methodical process.
Yeah, exactly. It's a neurological process. It's naturally occurring. So I think it is a real barrier, the whole performance hypnosis thing, to get over, and it's a real connotation that people have with it. And I think that's why, lots of maybe sort of like the bigger apps now that teach people kind of mental skills talk about kind of meditation or guided meditation or visualization, because it is all the same thing. But you're losing that connotation of what hypnosis is or isn't, or what people believe it to be. So I trained, I was fascinated with hypnotherapy as an intensive care nurse. I've kind of read scientific papers about how effective it was at controlling pain, and what it kind of was, and other clinical applications, which there's a lot of kind of evidence out there for. So I retrained as a hypnotherapist just before COVID, with a view to work with clients specifically with chronic pain. And during our training, we sort of did lots of training in different aspects of how to help people with hypnosis. And I think really what's fascinating, if you'd asked me sort of back then, I'd have said hypnotherapy is such a massively powerful tool, and I would have been actually hypnosis is a thing. And I kind of believe I'm with you a little bit now that actually it isn't a thing. And I think, like I touched on before, I think all the tools we talk about, so guided meditation, visualization, hypnosis, and self-hypnosis, because hypnosis is really all self-hypnosis, all we're doing is getting people to use their imaginations and language in a powerful way to change how they're kind of doing something or feeling about something, using their own brain's natural ability to learn new things and new ways of doing things. So yeah, the stage hypnosis and the performance that is always a barrier that people bring up, and it's fascinating because I mean, in a way, it does kind of show how powerful hypnosis can be, but all it's really showing is kind of people's willingness to participate in a performance, really, to be honest. You can't make somebody to do something in hypnosis they don't want to do. And the person who's being hypnotized is the one who's doing all the work. So I always say to my clients when I work them one-to-one, I've got the map, you're the one doing the driving, you're the one who is taking you to where you need to be and doing the work internally. So traditionally, when you think of people who may appear hypnotized, they're kind of like looking down. It looks almost, that's where the name comes from. Hypnos comes from sleep, because people look like they're asleep. It goes back a long time. It's being used in Egyptian times, Roman times. People had sleep temples where people go if they were ill, and some priests would kind of chant things to them while they were relaxed or asleep, and it just kind of progressed from there. But actually inside, it's just a very, very active process of using language and imagination and building up a scene in your mind, or building up a scene of how you want to be or how you want to do something, and kind of just showing your brain a new, better option. And as you do that over time, whether it's a repetitive thing, some people do get really, really quick benefits from just 1 or 2 sessions. Some people may take longer, but it's just about kind of building up those sort of better habits in your brain, so that when that thing happens in real life, whether it's a situation or something happening, then you almost have like a different option subconsciously. I don't want to talk about subconscious and unconscious, this big, powerful, entity, but often most things we do start from an unconscious basis. So actually we become aware of what we're doing after it's actually been sort of triggered. So actually by building up these better options, you just have, when it comes to that thing happening, you will have a better outcome or a different way of doing it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And you obviously you've mentioned visualization a few times there, which I guess is a big part of it. And I think, is that a skill? Would you say, is that something that you need to practice and train?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I know certainly it's like mental training. It is mental training. So the more you do it, the better you get at it, and the more benefits you get from it. And actually, if you don't do it, you kind of lose it. I've not doing anything myself for a little while, and I've started it again recently, and I certainly noticed that it's a little bit slower for me to get into this kind of state than before. And certainly what I teach cyclists is to kind of practice really often. It's not something that has to be time intensive. I'm just launching an app for cyclists, which is kind of visualization, and it's lots of guided audio sessions, and all the sessions in there probably like 10-20 minutes at the most, and you only have to do it like 2 or 3 times a week. But actually the more you do it, the quicker it is to get in and out of that. It's a very, very, call it a trance or call it a state of mind or focus, but just you can kind of flip in and out the more often you do it. So by training to get in and out more quickly, then you can start to use it on the bike to kind of manage your pain or effort, or just sort of manage your focus as well. So yeah, it is absolutely is a skill. Yeah.
Where you said it was quite interesting where you kind of jumped around the potential terminology for that, as you said, a trance or a state of mind or a focus. With those different terminologies, is that a way of breaking down barriers for skeptics, for example? So as I mentioned earlier, I'm very skeptical of being hypnotized. I've always said, oh yeah, Darren Brown wouldn't be able to put me under. I just don't believe that I could be hypnotized. And we've already said, yeah, stage hypnosis has kind of put a bit of a cloud over what this actually is. Would you use different terminology to try and break down that barrier and get people to understand that it's their mindset, or how would you approach a skeptic, I suppose?
I think it's really just a sort of like way of trying to explain to people what the experience is like. If you mention the word trance or state to hypnotherapists, it's like throwing a grenade into a room, because there's been a whole debate going on for decades about, is hypnosis an altered state? Trance has connotation, because actually if you mention a trance to a group of hypnotherapists, lots of people argue, well, it's not a trance or it is trance, because they're associating trance with that appearance. Actually, everybody else in the public will think, actually, yeah, people can walk around in a bit of a trance all day long. And it's just kind of implying that you just have a slight shift in how you're experiencing something, probably more focused. So I think why I use different kind of terminology, so I just really show people what it really feels like when you are hypnotized. Because actually, when you hypnotize yourself, or when you are hypnotized by somebody else, even when you're hypnotized by somebody else, it's just them guiding you a little bit. You're doing it all yourself. And all it really feels like is, we won't do it now, but if you would close your eyes and count down from 10 to 1, when you got to that countdown, that's generally how you feel you're hypnotized. It's just a bit more focused and things are a bit quiet. You don't kind of have that mental chatter going on. But that's essentially it. You know, it's not, it doesn't have to be this big, profound, you know, like an anesthetic. You know, people just feel very, very focused, very aware of what's going on internally, but all that kind of mental chatter dies down. And that's really what it feels like. It's not, so that's why I kind of use terms, you know, kind of interchangeably, because it's important to show people what it actually feels like when you are hypnotized. Although I do drift away from actually the word hypnotized now, because it's really just getting people to go into that, I guess, a resourceful state of mind when you can change how you do something or how you experience something.
Yeah, the stigma around, I guess, the word hypno and adding hypno to anything will obviously have, well, most people have a predetermined idea of what they believe it is.
The common concepts are, you are doing something to guide your attention, whether it's visualize something, whether it's breathing in a certain way, looking at something, guiding your attention. And then that results in a change in your kind of brain waves, where you drift into this state where, you know, flow, you know, all these kind of resourceful things that we talk about. You're in the same kind of brainwave state as you are when you're really focused watching the TV or reading a book. Your brain drifts into this kind of different state. When we're walking around and active, we're in kind of beta wave brain states, but you drift into a different, more focused state. And that is literally the same as hypnosis and visualization. And so you're just using your attention to get into that slightly shifted state. And then whatever you do in that state is what you're doing to achieve either an outcome, whether it's changing how you feel about something, how you do something, or how you're perceiving something physically. So, you know, the reason why I got into that work was because of this huge amount of evidence out there about chronic pain. And, you know, certainly for cyclists, what you can do is, this is something that I'm doing a lot of at the minute, is certainly you can start off on a turbo train as a starting point to build up to use out on the road. You can just literally sort of like focus your eyes on the middle distance a bit and focus on your breathing for a little while, and you will still that you feel that sort of focus start to drift in a bit. But then you can do some really cool things. So if you're doing a hard effort, you can do things where you can just sort of imagine the picture in your mind of what pain you're feeling at the moment, or the effort, and you see it's a number, or just imagining. Everyone does things in different ways. You know, you're saying about how you did the letters in a different way. It's about giving people like just that broad guidance of what they need to do, and they kind of do things in their own way about what's best for them. But you can picture a number in your head, and if you just sort of dial it down by 1 or 2, so say you're working really hard during an interval, like your pain or discomfort is about 8, drop it down to 7 or 6, and just allow yourself to notice what sort of changes in your legs, and they will feel a little bit lighter, and you can sort of do that. And it's really cool how you can start sort of play with things a little bit, just in that slightly shifted state of mind. It doesn't have to be a big, profound being fast asleep or pretending to be a chicken. It's just that shift in focus and being more focused, really.
Yeah, absolutely. I think in the early stages of me exploring this kind of approach, it felt unnatural, and it felt a bit silly, and it kind of made me feel a little bit uncomfortable, because I was doing something that, you know, I initially thought was a bit silly, because again, I don't want to keep saying this, but then, you know, hypnosis, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And, but actually when I got into it and I started focusing on it, there's definitely a perceived benefit. I was feeling, well, more assured, more confident. I've not used it in the ways you've highlighted so far, like to almost turn that dial down on how much effort I'm feeling in the legs, which would be super interesting. So from a cyclist perspective, you'll probably love this, but sweet spot sessions are my absolute worst.
Yep.
I'm a kind of natural built sprinter, so I can do high power efforts for short amounts of time, and I really thrive on that. A sweet spot session sitting just below functional threshold and trying to sustain that for a long period of time is so hard, and I find that physically and mentally difficult. So I think I'll be keen to, on my next sweet spot session on the turbo, get a nice long high percentage sweet spot session and see if I can visualize that just ticking down a notch.
Yeah, I have I have an audio that I can send you actually. What you can do is you just literally sort of like before about a minute or two before your interval starts, just pick a spot on the wall and just sort of start focus on it for a bit and focus on your breathing, and you'll notice that sort of shift in your mindset happen. And then as you're about to start that kind of interval, just take a few deep breaths in now and do a long breath out as it starts, and just focus. And what you can do is you can kind of just, even if it's just something that's going to mentally quieten things down for a bit, especially as the interval goes on, to kind of give you a break, as it were, from what you're feeling. And you can kind of dip in and out as the interval goes on, just by sort of picking that spot on the wall again, deep breath out, and let yourself drift back in again. You were saying about skill earlier. One of the things is that when you first start to do this kind of stuff, even just a short amount of time can feel quite long. Mm-hmm. And especially when you're doing something active like on the bike, it can feel like a bit of an effort, if that makes sense, to stay in for longer. But what you find is the more you kind of practice it, the more natural it feels, and you can stay in it for longer and longer and extend those times. And it's very similar to what is covered in hypnobirthing, about you can sort of like not time distortion, but just allowing time to pass more quickly. And if you're finding those intervals quite hard, you might find dipping in and out will get easier.
I think that might be my package arriving, as I mentioned.
Yeah.
No, it's not. It's Royal Mail. Sorry.
That's right.
That. Can I ignore that one? Yes, I can. Fantastic. Sorry. Yeah.
Right. But just saying about, you're saying about kind of like it feeling silly about, and it's about taking control really about what you're telling yourself, because often some of the things that you start to tell yourself are coming from this unconscious origin, whether it's based on previous beliefs or self-esteem or other experiences in the past, but actually they're not very helpful. And it's just about, and it does feel weird at first. It does feel a bit, the best I can describe it feels a bit clunky, kind of stopping these kind of naturally occurring thoughts and stopping them and putting something better in. But probably as it felt for you, it does kind of feel more natural the more you do it.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm personally, I think I'm quite good at visualizing. I think I still have the active imagination of 8-year-old me. When I do my visualization, it's quick and it feels easy and natural. So I've taken to it quite well. It's just the skeptic in me is also very large. So it's a big part of my my inner monologue around these kinds of practices. So it's trying to quieten the skeptic a little bit and just give it a go. But
it's embracing it.
Yeah, absolutely. And with so my wife being a health psychologist, I'm bombarded with a lot of this kind of stuff a lot anyway. My father-in-law was an EFT practitioner as well, so I've had a little bit of Well, I've not done any of it, but I've had a lot of information given to me about EFT and that kind of thing. And then that's a lot about the power of the mind as much as it is the tapping side of it as well. And that's, you know, tapping into root causes of pain and emotional stress and things like that. So it's super interesting. I want to go into a few things. I think it's definitely worth talking about your book and your app, because those things are super interesting. And then I also want to go into maybe some tips, hints and tips for those who are going to be doing the ride with me in Italy next week.
Yeah, absolutely.
And if there are any nice quick things that some of the riders can do who haven't done this kind of event before. So it's been a while since I checked out what your book was, so I don't entirely remember the whole the premise and subject of it, but I'll let you cover that off. So you have a book on cycling mindset. Is that's
yeah? It's particularly about self-hypnosis. So all hypnosis is essentially self-hypnosis, because I say, you know, it's the person who's doing it is guiding themselves into it. And, you know, all the cyclists I've worked with and taught mental skills like self-hypnosis or visualization, I've seen some really great results. And I thought, well, I just want to put it into a book. You know, I had some time over Christmas and a while before, and I thought it was just something that I think I needed to do, just kind of put it all down in a structured way for me to explain it. So in the book, we talk about kind of the how hypnosis, the origins of it, some delve into the science of it, and things that you can do in self-hypnosis for cycling. So that covers visualization. There's some specific visualizations about dialing down the pain, like we talked about earlier, and also just some really cool stuff. That I taught this technique to a guy who was doing sprint duathlon competitions to try and get into Team GB just years ago, and he was struggling with just kind of like the doubts creeping in during hard rides. You know, he gets, you were saying earlier, you know, this hurts, I'm cold. They all start to kind of feed in. So what I did was I taught him, it sounds silly, but it's just about being playful, about being a robot. Taught him sort of build up while he's cycling, imagining sort of like becoming metal, you know, legs going like pistons, and just having that kind of mindset of a robot that had a couple of missions to achieve or goals to achieve. And that was really key in him killing off these kind of like, you know, these negative thoughts creeping in. And he emailed me afterwards and said it was amazing because I used it. I had 2 really hard runs and did loads better than I thought, because he just literally was completely in his zone. It's about kind of being playful about what you use to get where you need to be. So there's things like that covered inside it. And also just some really useful things for other parts of cycling, about motivation, you know, off season, whether it's kind of using visualizations to look back and review things that you've done in a kind of non-emotional way. Sometimes things that have not gone so well in the past can hold us back. So actually it's about kind of learning from them and then sort of moving forward from those. And also, so we're not talked about is using visualization for things like technical skills, things that involve actual physical motor function. And this is where kind of visualization is used a lot in really high level cyclists, things like cornering or descending, because actually what we know from science is that, and this gets fascinating, is that you don't have to be doing something physical for your brain to build the neural connections to build the motor skills for that thing. So you can practice something mentally and still improve it physically when you do it. So by doing things like visualization, cornering to the best you can, when you improve someone's cornering, or if they've got particular lack of confidence with descending, it's about building that confidence so you can visualize descending confidently in your mind, and it will you know, help you descend like that. So there's lots of things like that covered in the book, which all comes from, you know, work that I've done with people one-to-one. So it literally lays out everything that people need to do, so the practical steps to do it, what you can do in self-hypnosis cycling, and some techniques for specific things like pain and flow and mindset.
Yeah, it reminds me of Cool Runnings. So the guy who drives the bobsled is in his hotel room with pictures of the corners, isn't he? He's just
Oh
going through
yes,
the course,
yeah,
just visualizing the course.
yeah.
And yeah, I think I was far too young when I first saw that to appreciate that actually that is a genuine technique to
I watched it
be
with my kids
better at
recently,
games.
actually.
So
Yeah,
good.
it is. And I mean, when you look at what I love about where we are now is that actually it's being talked about in a really not serious way, but people are being very open about this kind of thing now. I read a couple of interviews with, pro cyclists who, like Mark Cavendish talks about it in a Rouleur interview, and he doesn't talk about doing visualization in a structured way like we're doing, but he says about how he'll go through every corner and every inch of a corner of circuit, and lots of people now sort of talk about the mental preparation they do the night before a race, and this is exactly what it is when people, I mean, obviously people can do it in this unstructured way and get great benefits from it, but actually learning how to do it in a structured way as well is it's great that it's being more talked about. And this is why I think you're going back again to the connotations of hypnosis. And I think it's great that almost by lots of apps out there, whether they say they're doing guided meditation or things like that, it is the same thing as hypnosis, but we're kind of moving away from them. I guess it's being marketed better, but it's still showing people that actually people can do mental training, get great benefits, no matter what it's called. Mindfulness now, I think. I remember mindfulness was called Zen years ago, Zen gardening or Zen cooking or things. But now it's mindfulness. But, if it helps people achieve those things and makes it more accessible, then that's all great. It's all good that people start to realize the power of their mind and how they can change things.
So for the people taking on the overseas challenge with me next week in Italy, for those who may find themselves in these pain caves as they're going along, because let's face it, 100 kilometers on average a day for 3 days, it's no small feat, especially there were going to be cyclists here who this is the first time they're doing maybe that distance, let alone back to back. And there are also athletes there with spinal cord injuries. So there are different kinds of challenges for different people to overcome. So I don't expect a one answer to cover everything, but what would your quick tips be for those participating in the event to overcome those moments where they're struggling?
Yeah, absolutely. I think for people who maybe not so familiar with doing long days or long routes, certainly breaking that route down into smaller chunks mentally. So if it's the 100 kilometers each day, break it down into 10 kilometers. Just focus on doing those 10 kilometers, then focus on the next 10, then focus on the next 10, because it's much more achievable to do 10 kilometer rides than one 100 kilometer ride. So that often is a really great way of kind of helping people to focus and stay positive and really just have that mindset that they're going to get through that day. Beforehand, if people want to sort of do some visualization about being confident in the ride and doing it, then all they can do is do some deep breathing. So count it down from 10 to 1 to get in that relaxed state of mind. And just imagine just being really confident in the ride. So just picture up the scene, build up the senses. So imagine riding your bike, feeling all the sense underneath you, like feeling the handlebars and the pedals. And just imagine feeling really confident and kind of see that ride happening, getting through to the finish line and feeling really good about completing each day. People can do that in the lead up to it to feel that confidence beforehand. And I'd say also, if people can do it, doing some relaxation after the event. I'm sure it's probably quite social, but if people can do like 10 minutes of just literally closing their eyes and relaxing, what that can do is it's not just about feeling good by kind of shaking off the stress, the physical stress of the day, kind of clears out all those whole hormones, and you can kind of start to, I guess, recover a bit more quickly. Because things like cortisol, can reduce kind of muscle healing, things like that. So just by relaxing actually does do your physical benefits as well. So relaxation, even if you can do spare 5-10 minutes, just close your eyes, just do some breathing exercises will be beneficial. Chunking down the distance during the ride and just doing some visualization beforehand, just feeling really good through the ride and seeing yourself complete each day and feeling how good that will feel, be really beneficial, I think.
Amazing, thank you. I'm sure I will make use of that. So let's see if I can get some of the other riders to do it as well. So talking about your app, so you said that you're releasing an app soon, and you've just kindly mentioned that you would be willing to give some early access to the riders for this. Could you just, I guess, give us a quick rundown of what that is? Actually, and it sounds like that could be useful for this riders in, is it lead relaxation techniques, and then sorry, you explain it, and I'll stop.
Yeah, no, sorry, yeah. So it really pulls in all the work I've done one-to-one with cyclists in the past, and I recorded a just like a progressive muscle relaxation session ages ago that my wife kindly sort of sent around to everyone locally. Apparently, it's been a real hit with people. And my wife, I mean, my wife said, "Yeah, it'd be great if you had like an app for the stuff you're doing." I was like, "Oh, of course, I can have an app." So what it is it's going to be an app called Flow, and it's going to be a library of guided visualization sessions for cyclists initially, focusing on a range of things. So whether it's confidence in certain situations, technical skills, so cornering or descending or climbing, general mindset, motivation. There'll be some discipline specific things, so time trial, people can visualize kind of getting their positions better, and also things they can do on the bike, so learning how to get into flow. There'll be turbo trainer sessions, so all in a complete library that people can listen to around their physical training. There'll be some wellness sessions as well, so recovery, only like 10 to 20 minute sessions. People can do like 2 or 3 times a week, and there'll be structured programs in the futures where people can do these around their race calendars, things like that, or pre-event. But it's really pulling in all the things I've done before with cyclists in an accessible format that people can access on a mobile phone and listen to as and when needed. Yes, it's called Flow. We launch it in June, but we do have some core sessions in the beta version that can happily make available. One of our test riders, he listened to the turbo trainer session once, where it shows you what I said to you earlier about sort of focusing and controlling your pain. He went and did a training sort of few days in the Peak District, and he said on a 20% climb, he noticed the difference just from doing that one session. So I'm not sure if it's a hilly course or a fairly reasonable course you're doing, but even that might be beneficial. Even if people don't use it on the turbo trainer, it still shows you things you can do on the bike to kind of dial down that effort when things get particularly tough or you need to dig a bit deeper.
Amazing. Well, I have just seen the GPX of the route, and it's rather meanfully got a nasty hill right at the end of day 3. So yeah, that sounds like it'll be ideal for that when everyone's got
just that little sting in the tail at the end.
Oh, 3 days of riding in your legs, and then you just chuck a hill right at the end. It's that's mean, but yeah, I think we can help get people through that. So that's great. Jamie, thanks for taking the time to speak with me today. It's all been super interesting, and I hope a lot of people get a lot from this. And yeah, I look forward to seeing your app and using those lessons.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me on.